Hi there and welcome to the CyberHut TV Vendor Introduction Series. My name is Simon Moffat, founder and analyst at the CyberHut. In our Vendor Introduction Series, I get to interview super smart founders across our global identity security network to understand a little bit more about their mission and vision to solve some of today's more complicated problems. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have Bojan from HYPR with me today. Bojan, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Simon.
Thank you for taking a little bit of time out. I appreciate how busy it is to run a business and change the world with respect to some of our key identity security problems. And the way this works, for those who've not seen one of these episodes before, I essentially get to ask Bojan three really simple questions to understand a little bit more about his vision and how HYPR solving some of today's problems. And essentially, I always start off with the same question, which is really simple one, really, which is what is the problem that HYPR is looking to solve?
Yeah, so the identity assurance problem is the biggest one that we're looking to solve, and we think it's the most important problem in security currently. And when we think about identity assurance, we think about it in terms of common sense identity assurance, which is what common sense controls can we implement, or any business can implement using technology to make identity security easier, faster, better for the end user, better for the organization itself, and a less painful administrative experience for the people, caring and feeding for the technology on a day-to-day basis.
I love that. I love that sort of common sense approach as well. I think there's so much complexity within identity, within authentication, within identity sort of proofing, verification, validation. So much can go wrong, which in turn then has huge knock-on effects, I think, for how we present ourselves to downstream systems, the level of confidence and assurance we have with the identities that get presented. So I quite like that common sense, prescriptive, make it simple. I think make it simple to adopt. And
I think identity security, identity assurance is a human problem at the end of the day. And if you can give a technology that's a security product to the end user, if their response isn't, "Oh, that's cool," or "Oh, yeah, that makes sense," then you're on the wrong path, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to drive really common sense change and fundamental change is if the technology that you give to a person just kind of makes sense to them inherently. They don't feel like they have to jump through hoops mentally for it to make sense for them.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, isn't it? It's meeting the business where they are, where they're operating, meeting the end user where they are doing their job function or maybe doing something online as a consumer. I guess getting out of their way as well, isn't it? It's removing barriers to adoption. I think things like authentication, the login screen, how complicated can a login screen be? Well, actually very, very complicated, but it's been there for a long time, hasn't it? Those concepts of authenticating, proofing, verification, validation. I think, as you say, simplifying, prescribing, easy to adopt, easy to integrate, and having that consistency, isn't it, across all of the systems that you leverage and you integrate, and not having, MFA for this one-time passwords for this, usernames and passwords for something else. It's just, it's not an easy thing to deal with.
We often hear from customers where they say, if I could take my worst user experience and just make it consistent across all my users, it will be better than the many inconsistent experiences I currently have.
100%. And it's the end user obviously is impacted by this, but I think also the system administrators, because it suddenly becomes difficult to manage, difficult to update, difficult to hunt for threats, different login systems, different credential reset systems, really, really hard to find baselines and behavior, adversarial activity, just goes on and on and on, which I don't think is healthy for the admins or the end user. So that sort of ties into the next question, I guess, is why is this becoming more of a problem now? Is it just we have more systems that we are accessing? Is it just the things like having poor experiences? What's sort of driving the need for this assurance model today, do you think?
I think it's three primary things that are kind of creating one perfect storm of need. One is this concept of identity sprawl, and many organizations having to manage a user's identity in so many different places. I think I saw statistics that said the average enterprise manages a person's identity in 25 different places, which is a massive problem. Two is obviously AI, right? With AI now, we can create extremely sophisticated identity-based attacks that were previously very manual in nature. Now they can be highly automated and highly accurate. So that really adds to the problem significantly. And then three is business velocity. Right now, it's critical more than ever for businesses to be able to move fast. And having an identity stack that is not able to be agile enough to move at the pace of business is a major issue for organizations. And I think it's part of the reason that we see so many identity problems stall or fall off the rails. Or projects stall or fall off the rails when businesses undertake them. And so we think that if organizations can have a single platform that can provide those common sense identity assurance controls across their entire identity portfolio, then this becomes a tenable problem that they can tackle, and it allows them to have that business velocity, that protection against the modern AI-based attacks that they have, and it provides them with those consistent security controls that they can apply across the entire identity portfolio in their business, rather than having to go silo by silo to implement individual controls.
Yeah, I love that. I love that speed of business, isn't it? It's really tying the identity ecosystem, the identity controls, really into what it's there for, which is helping the business do business, whatever that may be, generate revenue, collaborate, make products and services, and being able to operate at the speed of business, I think is vitally important, because as you say, AI attacks, AI threats, emerging threats, regulation, compliance, competitive pressures, global pandemics, whatever it can be, the business has to keep being a business. They have to change, they have to adapt, they have to deliver more, and you can't have your authentication, authorization, and proofing systems being the sort of bottleneck ultimately, slowing the business down. I think you're absolutely right. Identity sprawl, more systems, more identity types, more authentication modalities. You've got to have a bit of consistency there in order to deliver what you're supposed to deliver, which is whatever the business is looking to do. And you certainly can't have identity as the bottleneck. So that so neatly ties into the third part of this little interview, I guess, which is why HYPR best place? What is your secret sauce ultimately to try and solve some of these problems?
Yeah, so we started HYPR 10 years ago. And when we first started the company, we said we're going to create a security company first. And back then, when we first entered the identity space, we realized, hey, wow, we thought identity companies were security companies. And boy, were we wrong. Right, because we realized very obvious security flaws in terms of architecture and product approach that the traditional identity players were taking, and they were just really scary to us. And so we decided to create a company that focuses on merging this identity space with the security space and building controls that any security team would be proud and happy to have, and any identity team would be proud and happy to have from a user experience and maintenance and usability perspective. So over the last 10 years, we have done this for the world's largest organizations. I mean, we have customers today that have tens of millions of individual end users, customers using HYPR for authentication and various identity security controls. We have organizations that use us for their employees as well, companies that have hundreds of thousands of individual employees. And so I think what makes us best prepared to solve this problem is we have the experience and the ability to deploy these identity security controls that are common sense at scale. And really where we focus are 4 key areas. We focus on that initial credential provisioning process, that onboarding process, which is critical now that there's a lot of organizations that have fake employees trying to get jobs at their companies. The authentication process by itself, we think that should always be phishing resistant. It should never fall back to a phishable factor. 3 is the actual credential reset process itself, where, hey, once I get rid of the password as an organization, how do I make sure I never have to go back to a password? How do I make sure that when my users get new devices, when they're locked out, how can they still get in, and how can my business continue to operate? And then 4 is the actual endpoint and system access, which is, hey, all my employees, all my end users are using this computer in front of them or this system in front of them as a window into the digital world. How do we make sure that access into that is secure so that the credentials can never be intercepted by malicious actors when they access it? So by focusing in those 4 key areas and making sure that we can secure each of those links in that chain, and really what we do with our customers is we go in and we help them identify which of those links are the weakest, and then try to reinforce those. And we've done that successfully at scale for the world's biggest companies and even some of the smallest companies, right? So we believe that the best-in-class identity assurance controls should be applicable to any size business, not just the big ones. But it's certainly the big ones right now that are feeling it the most because they tend to have the most money.
I love that. That merger of identity and security. Moving security from being that outlier, being the null, if you like, holding back the organization, taking identity, which just used to be that sort of productivity thing, and sort of merging them together and having that much more, as you say, scalable approach. Taking things like phishing resistance, B2E, B2C, end to end as well. I think over the years, the last sort of 10, 15 years, we've had multiple different authentication approaches, but they're very small, very narrow, and just apply to the administrators or just apply to a particular set of users within an application or an ecosystem. But I think now you need to have scale, you need to have end-to-end consistency, etc., which I think is a good thing.
Lots of security teams are very intimidated by identity projects because their entire careers they've spent really kind of avoiding the end user at all costs, right? and making sure that the thing that they implement doesn't ultimately disrupt that person, and they've done that by never putting anything in front of them. And really it's come to the situation has come to a head now where identity and security teams have to work together, and now they're often under the same umbrella within organizations. And these are significant growing pains that every company has right now, and we've been luckily on the forefront of helping them through that.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. I absolutely agree. I think they're definitely merging together. I think once they do, you get a perfect storm of all of the benefits of identity and security. And I think if you can, as you said, do it at scale, do it end to end, across a range of identity types, that to me seems like a winning combination. Boyan, thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your busy schedule. I appreciate you've got lots going on at the minute, which is absolutely super duper. Really good to understand a little bit more around this sort of converged identity assurance model and identity and security sort of coming together at scale to deliver value to a whole host of different enterprises, which is brilliant to hear about. So Boyan, thank you for taking a little bit of time out. Thank you for watching, everybody. This has been another episode in the CyberHuts Vendor Introduction Series. Thanks, Boyan, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.